Hello everyone and welcome to another really awesome game from round 5 of the Norway Chess 2022. It's the classical game between Anish Giri and Temur Rajabov. Rajabov being one of the candidates of the candidates tournament that is starting in, I believe, 11 days. The opening of the candidates is on the 16th, and on the 17th of June we will have the first round of the candidates tournament. It's very interesting here. Rajabov will employ the Berlin defense against Anish, and it's a nice test of whether or not to use such lines maybe in the candidates tournament, as you'll see. So Anish has the white pieces and he opens with e4. Like we said, we will have the Berlin defense, so knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, the Ruy Lopez is on the board, and now knight to f6. Definitely not an easy opening to beat, and for a very long time it was very difficult to even find ways of how to play for a win against the Berlin defense. So here d3, we have bishop to c5, and now pawn to c3. We have d6, and now Anish sort of wastes the tempo as he already played d3. He just advances the pawn to d4, even though castles here is the most played move. So here d4, we have captures, and now you have to give this bishop to b4 check. If you just go to b6, d5, and white is just all over the place. So bishop to b6, sorry, not bishop to b6, bishop to b4 check, bishop to d2, and here, Rajabov could just, for example, castle. He decides to trade here. We have bishop captures, knight b to d2 capturing, and bishop to d7 now, saying, okay, now d5 is nothing, and also if you capture, I can just capture back with the bishop. Here, Anish castles, Temur castles, and rook to e1. Now you will have to worry about e5, rook to e1 at some point, and rook to e8. There are some moves that were played in this position, like knight to e7, a6 is a known move, d5 is a known move, but knight to e7, the immediate knight e7 by Rajabov, the rook to e8 by Rajabov is a new move, so already as of move 11, we have a completely new game. So let's see how Anish deals with this. He plays h3, takes away the g4 square from black's pieces, also creates a little bit of breathing room for the white king, and now knight to e7, offering a trade of bishops. And of course, you do not want to trade this. Your bishop is awesome. Black's bishop isn't really doing all that much, so you just tuck the bishop back to f1 for later use. And here we have c6 by Rajabov, and this is where the game really becomes incredibly interesting. It's a normal move. You prepare expansion on the queen side. It's a move that everyone plays pretty much in every position. But now comes queen to b3 by Anish. And now, okay, he's attacking the b7 pawn, but also he's putting pressure on the f7 pawn. So let's say you play b5, you just want to continue, a queenside expansion. Knight g5 is more problematic than you would think, because how do you stop just capturing on f7? You have to move the rook back, and that's already pretty bad. It's a classical game. Losing a tempo like this, it's, terrible. But even e5 is coming, and for example, captures, attacks the knight, knight goes here, e6, we already break through, and it's a much better position for white. For example, bishop captures, you're gonna attack the rook. Here we're gonna play rook 8 to e1. Already we have nicely doubled rooks on the e file, and white will just always be better here. So that's one of the problems. So Rajabov, instead of playing something like this, he goes queen to b6. He offers a queen trade. Queen to c7 is also possible, but he doesn't want to face the knight to g5 idea, so he plays queen to b6, and Anish says no queen trade, queen to a3. He just puts pressure on the on the d6 pawn, queen back to c7, and now we have knight to c4, again putting pressure on the pawn here. And while you could advance this pawn to d5, now then knight d6 might be annoying, and now if you move the rook, then even e5, and again, look at this position. You have a defended knight on d6. That's not fun to play. So instead, knight to c8. Rajabov just defends the d6 square one more time, and now pawn to e5. We have captures, knight to d5, and now rook a to c1. Nicely aligning the rook with the queen. And now, how can black continue this? It's very hard to move your pieces. This knight is really needed here, guarding the d6 square. And how do you get the rook into the game? So, okay, for the moment, h6. e6, creating a little bit of breathing room for the king. That's always a useful move, although maybe now is not the time for it, but it's really hard to make a move for black. And Anish goes for b4. That's a move pretty much you can make in any position, and it will always be a good move. And here, of course, you do not want to allow this pawn to come to c5, because if black at any point decides to expand on the queen side, the c6 pawn will be a weak backwards pawn, and it's going to be very hard for Radjabov to defend it. So here we have queen back to d8, getting the queen away from the c file, and now queen back to b2. We have rook to b8 and now pawn to a3, nicely defending the pawn. We have a6 and now rook c to d1, now aligning the rook with the queen once again. Queen back to c7, and now comes queen to d4. Here also the engine really likes activating the bishop right away with bishop to d3 and the bishop to b1 to grab hold of this diagonal. But okay, here Radjabov plays, Giri plays queen to d4 first, and now bishop to f5, of course countering that bishop to d3 idea. Knight to h4, attacking the bishop, bishop to h7, and now Anish goes for bishop to d3, just challenging this bishop. And if you look at the position now, it's very, very difficult to find a useful move for black. All of the squares are just covered by white. The b6 square, the d6 square, the f6 square, the f5 square also controlled by white. So it's very hard to find a move. You can trade here, of course you can do this. For example, captures, but white's position is just vastly superior. The rook is coming to g3, and by capturing on d3 you haven't really improved your position. So capturing for the sake of captures isn't really a good idea. So here, for the lack of a better move, Radjabov plays b5, and it is sort of a top move recommended by the engine, but you know that you have to play this. The knight will now have to move from an active square, and you will activate your pieces a little bit, but you will be stuck with the backward c6 pawn, and that's gonna be a huge problem. So here Anish just trades, captures with check, captures, and knight to a5, already putting pressure on the c6 pawn, and knight c to e7 now, adding more defenders to the pawn. We have rook to c1, now attacking the pawn, and now rook b to d8. We have queen e4 check, king to h8, and now knight to f3. Now this knight can come to d4, and is gonna put even more pressure on the c6 pawn. And here the question is, do you push f5 or not? Now if you push f5, it's a fine move. White can even capture Alpason on f6, but if white just moves the queen, you've given white a pass pawn basically for free, and the f5 pawn doesn't really do all that much. So Radjabov decides against this. He plays queen to d7, again getting the queen away from the c file, and now rook c2. Anish just prepares to double up on the c file. We have knight to g6, and here with rook to c8 you still kind of continue defending, but it's an incredibly passive position, and Radjabov is very low on time, so he goes for the active knight to g6, but it doesn't help him all that much. Now Anish just grabs the pawn, knight captures on c6, rook to c8, putting pressure on the knight, and rook e to c1. So doubling up here, we have knight to g to f4, and now knight c to d4. Look at this, sorry, not knight c to d4, offering a trade of rooks. And here rook captures on c2, rook captures, and pawn to f6, now trying to undermine white's position. Of course you cannot capture, the queen is now on e4, but you can play this beautiful rook to c5 move. And what do you do now? Well, we have f captures on e5, knight captures on e5, now threatening all sorts of nasty checks here if of course Radjabov allows it, and there really isn't a good move here for black. Here Radjabov tries knight to c3, but the position is lost regardless of what he plays. It's one last trick in the position that might work, but it's very unlikely that it will. But still, you are extremely low on time, you have to play something. So rook captures on c3, and now Radjabov goes for the move from the thumbnail. Queen captures on d4, hoping for queen captures and knight to e2, a beautiful royal fork. But even with this, white's position would still be winning with perfect play. So instead, after queen captures on d4, Anish just played knight to f7 check, and it was in this position on move 40 that Temur Radjabov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You can't go to h7, so you are losing the rook here with check. For example, king g8, we're going to capture this with check. king h7, and now rook c6, taking away this square from the king, and you are getting checkmated now. There is really nothing you can play. You can deliver one check, but that's it. There's no defending this. This will just be checkmate. So yeah, of course, after knight to f7 check, Radjabov resigned, and a wonderful victory for Anish in this, well, a really weird line of the Berlin defense. So where we did not have a pause the video moment in this video, which is weird, as I know you guys really enjoy those, and I enjoy preparing those. But here, there just wasn't that moment of tension where, you know, a move would decide the outcome of the game. It was just that basically from the start, from the line that Radjabov chose of the Berlin, his position just kept deteriorating move by move by move by move. So we could even say that maybe after, let's say, this c6 move, maybe even after c6, the position is already an incredibly difficult one to play. If we would ask some crazy version of Stockfish or AlphaZero, probably they would say, okay, c6 white is maybe +7, but who knows. So it was just a very difficult position to play positionally against someone as strong as Anish. So yeah, there you have it. It's very hard to pinpoint the exact moment where Radjabov went wrong, but you know, if you play a shaky line, and for someone as strong as Anish, this is definitely shaky, you will be punished. But also, he did try it out, and you know, if he had some ideas of maybe using it in the candidates tournament, maybe now not so much, or maybe he's just going to improve it. We'll see what happens. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Here are the standings, so we don't forget. After round 5, so Anand is leading the tournament with 10 points in sole lead. If he won that game, the classical game against Magnus, he would be far ahead of everyone. But as Magnus was able to get a draw, Anand only is now half a point in the lead. Magnus Carlsen in second with 9.5, with 8.5, Wesley So and Shahriar Mamediyar with 7, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave and Anish Giri, 6, Aryan Tari, Veselin Topalov with 4.5, Wang Hao with 3, and Temur Radjabov with 3 points, most likely saving all of his preparation for the candidates tournament, but that is of course to be expected, as you know, you're not going to waste it now. The candidates tournament starts in 11 days. But yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. A very nice positional masterpiece. I would like to thank Richard Knapp, Raymond Young, Cedar Simmons, Evalia and Lego, and David Kimura for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful tournament until it finishes. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.